so good to be seen, and it's even better to see you. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. This one, of course, brought to you by my Petmosphere app, the only pet app that you will ever need for anything pet related. Feel free to swing by the petmosphere.com website and download it for free on iOS and Android devices. So I'm happy to inform that there is yet another vegan documentary hitting Amazon, YouTube, and Tubi streaming services. I am, of course, talking about the Endgame 2050 documentary that was just recently released this past week. So as of 2 days ago, I caught it right before bed, and as of this morning, I watched it yet again having breakfast, and I took a lot of notes, some of which are good, some of which are bad, and all of which I want to share with you in today's episode. So Endgame 2050 was brought to you by Sofia Pineda Ocho. I actually have my laptop here. I'm researching. She happens to be a physician and environmentalist, and she is the creator of Endgame 2050. A great documentary. Spoiler alert, I enjoyed a lot of it, most of it. I did have my little nitpicking here and there, but at the end of the day, I give it a solid 8 out of 10. If you haven't watched it already, feel free to do so. Again, it's on Amazon, YouTube, and Tubi streaming services. So like most of the documentaries out there, it has a little bit of everything from health and nutrition to fitness to animal agriculture to environmental and global change. So what I want to do today is give you an honest review with honest feedback about what I saw, how it was delivered, the creative process, and pretty much everything in between. All right, so I want to kick things off by talking about Moby's introductory analogy. In case you haven't watched the documentary, he begins it by talking about an unfortunate accident that his friend had as a result of heroin addiction and alcoholism. I don't want to spoil it for you, but at the end of the day, what he was trying to tell us is that our actions are having immense consequences under which we have no recollection, no knowledge, and no awareness that it's actually going on. So I think it was a wonderful way to start off this documentary by hooking people into realizing that they are actually doing a lot more damage than they are previously acknowledging. So after Moby shares that anecdote with us and baits us in, we roll to the introductory credits, and a little CGI comes on. I'm not really a fan of that or how it was portrayed. I saw it as a little fake, and obviously it is fake, but it just wasn't up to par with what I was expecting from a vegan documentary. Again, that's neither here nor there, but at the end of the day, I am a content creator. I love to entice people with their eyes, and admittedly, it wasn't the best. I'm just going to throw that out there. So as the documentary begins, we now focus and get to know Miss Sophia, who happens to be the executive producer, director, and the actual narrator of all the voiceovers and on-screen talents that are encompassing this documentary. From aesthetic standpoint, I think that it wasn't the greatest of ideas to stand in front of a harsh white background and just talk to camera. I wasn't that engaged, admittedly. I wasn't too thrilled of the fact that I needed to see that constantly over and over again. I don't know if it was the best use for visuals or even audio. I wasn't that captivated by what she was having to say. It was kind of tough for me. From a, I guess, creative standpoint, I would have much rather seen a little B-roll and have Miss Sophia act as a voiceover talent as opposed to an on-camera talent. But again, that's neither here nor there. This is more of a creative thing. I would have used a lot more B-roll in her narration sequences to depict animal cruelty or to talk about climate statistics and things of that nature. But again, that's neither here nor there. I'm just giving it a shot and a description of the visual stimulation that we as humans prefer over perhaps audio. It's widely documented that we learn more by seeing and doing than by hearing. So again, that's neither here nor there. I'm just giving you my own personal opinion. Again, this is a very personal review. So after that introduction, she explains that the team has put together somewhat of a short film, and initially I was very excited because it's a good way to represent a story. It's a good way to have the audience that would otherwise never see this documentary be a little bit more engaged, and I thought it was brilliant until the actual short film commenced. Again, not to sound harsh or anything, but I just found it to be a little corny. The acting was not great. And I had a hard time wrapping my head as to why they chose to portray this story. Now, I get it. I know that it's very important for us to look into the future, and I think the heart was in the right place, but the actual storyline and the plot line wasn't too thrilling and all. I actually think I looked away and started TikToking for a while. I mean, I just wasn't seeing it. I know that the intention was the correct one, but the perhaps the delivery, it's a little cringeworthy. I wasn't a fan. There was this one scene where they hinted at the two main characters like being romantically involved towards the end, and then unfortunately she dies, and they didn't explain the reason. They again hinted at possible starvation or lack of shortage of food and things of that nature. So I don't know. It just didn't hit home for me. I'm being completely honest. I don't want to take a crap on it, but at the end of the day, I just didn't see it. Again, the intention was great, heart was in the right place. It just didn't do anything for me. In addition to that, throughout the documentary, we are taking back to this story over and over again, sequentially, as a result of the conversation matching what happened in the story. So again, I would have filled in those gaps with a little better b-roll and statistics and things of that nature, as opposed to going to a story that was, honestly, it made me cringe. Another thing of which I wasn't too much of a fan is that Miss Sophia shared an anecdote about her personal hardships with childbirth, and she was talking about how perhaps it's okay to not be a parent late in life or something along those lines. And I just didn't see the relation between her personal situation and veganism as a whole. Again, I'm just picking at straws here, but at the end of the day, I just didn't see why there was a need to talk about personal situation when it came to veganism. And finally, the one thing I least liked about this documentary was the fact that the animals were left towards the end of the film, when they in fact should be the very first focal point of the entire documentary, of every vegan documentary. Deforestation was spoken about first, ocean dead zones were spoken about first, human population was spoken about first, when at the end of the day, veganism is and forever will be a lifestyle for the animals. Let me explain why I mean that. Think of it as a cause and effect. In other words, as a result of animal agriculture, we are experiencing so many health issues around the world. As a result of animal agriculture, we are experiencing massive global and climate change. So when you consciously choose to leave animals towards the very end, as opposed to bring them to the forefront of the conversation, you're missing out on vital talking points that literally are the root of the problem. All right, so honesty does in fact go both ways. So now I'm going to share with you the things that I absolutely loved about this documentary, starting with deforestation and land use. I absolutely loved the fact that Miss Sophia explained in thorough detail just how much land is actually used for animal agriculture, and she harped on a lot of statistics. She made it one of the focal points of the documentary as well, so kudos to her for that. Another thing that I loved about this documentary is that most of the world is covered by water, and as a result, animals are being exploited in our oceans, and Miss Sophia was definitely keen to talk about that. Massive fishing is creating massive ocean dead zones, and she even went the extra mile to talk about carbonic acid and how CO2 is actually absorbed by water. I think that was a brilliant talking point. I think that the marine biologists who contributed to that conversation had very important things to say, and at the end of the day, that section was absolutely brilliant. Another very important talking point that Miss Sophia spoke of was human population, and how human population is a determining factor of how fast we are actually deteriorating our health and our planet, and causing climate to be a major role moving forward. The rates at which we are reproducing as humans is otherworldly. Right now, in the documentary, you can appreciate that to attain 1 billion people, it took so much amount of time, whereas to get to the 7.5 billion people that we have today, we did it in record time, which means that at the rate of which we are populating this earth, we are going to contribute to the most amount of climate change ever existing. Adding to that is another very important topic, which I loved that was discussed, was the topic of food shortages and inefficiency. Now, what exactly does she mean by that? I think the importance of talking about this is so that you're aware that for every 30 calories a cow consumes, it yields 1 calorie for human consumption. 60 for 2, 90 for 3, so on and so forth. So it's definitely a massive inefficiency that we are going through when we are killing cattle and feeding cattle to literally feed ourselves. Consequently, that takes us into the most important talking point up to then, which is the whole foods plant-based vegan lifestyle, which we've come to know as a sustainable and efficient, as well as effective form of eating throughout all stages of life. I think that the documentary made a very good explanation of this and put it front and center when the time came. Now, again, going back to Moby, I think Sophia did a wonderful job in demonstrating that as of right now, no pun intended, but humans are actual viruses. We are the actual virus of this entire ordeal through which we are going. And again, I don't know if this was wise to leap towards the very end. I honestly don't know when this was actually filmed. I don't know if we were still in quarantine, or maybe even beginning quarantine, or even in quarantine for that matter. But I think that the virus itself would have been great to use as a euphemism for mankind. Another quick bit of information that I found very useful was the hormone lies in the dairy portion of this documentary. I think that was genius on behalf of Miss Sophia. The fact that we don't add hormones to dairy does not necessarily mean that dairy does not contain hormones. So it was very important to point that out, because dairy is, I think, my opinion, I could be correct scientifically as well, that it is by far the worst product, animal product, of course, that you could actually be consuming by humans. And from a creative standpoint, and this will in fact end this review, is the fact that Miss Sophia inserted all those tidbits of information with the B-roll towards the end of the documentary as a way to unwind and close. I wish that would be more prevalent throughout the documentary, as opposed to having her talk in front of a white brash background. I think it would have been a better use, again, of the actual information process. But I did like the fact that the documentary ended with all of that, especially that one quote towards the end. I'm not going to spoil it. You watch it. So that does it for me, guys. That's officially my very first review of any vegan documentary, for that matter. Again, I think it was well put together. Honestly, it's an 8 out of 10. I still prefer something along the lines of more animal-centric, like Dominion and Earthlings and things of that nature. But again, very well put together. It was complete. It touched on a lot of bases, and I can't thank Miss Sophia enough for putting this together. That's going to do it for me, guys. If you got something out of this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to share your thoughts about Endgame 2050, leave them down on the comments below. If you're new here, consider subscribing, and I'm definitely going to see you in the next video. Shh.